The woman at my husband's funeral knew where my daughter kept her inhaler. That was the moment I realized Mark had given another woman pieces of our life that did not belong to her. The funeral ended at 2:17 on a gray Thursday in Naperville. I remember the exact time because my heels were killing me, my mascara had dried stiff under my eyes, and I was standing beside Mark's casket wondering why a blonde woman near the back kept crying harder than his own family. She was not loud about it. That made it worse. Quiet grief looks real. She stood near the church wall in a black wool coat with both hands pressed tightly together, like she was trying not to shake apart. I did not know her. I would have remembered her. Mark worked in finance. Over the years, I had met coworkers, clients, golf buddies, partners, neighbors. This woman was none of them. Still, she watched my daughter Sophia the entire service. Not casually. Carefully. Like she already loved her. At first, I told myself grief makes strangers emotional. Maybe she worked with Mark closely. Maybe he helped her financially. Maybe she just admired him. That explanation lasted exactly 9 minutes. After the service, Sophia stepped outside near the church steps because cold air always helped her anxiety. I was still trapped inside hugging relatives when I saw the blonde woman reach into her purse and hand Sophia a small blue inhaler spacer. My stomach tightened instantly. Sophia froze too. "How did you know?" my daughter asked quietly. The woman looked startled at herself, like she had forgotten she was not supposed to know things. "Mark mentioned it once," she said softly. "Mentioned it once. My husband barely remembered where we kept batteries. But somehow another woman knew our daughter used a spacer during panic attacks." I started walking toward them immediately. The woman saw me coming and stepped backward fast enough to bump into the church railing. "I am sorry," she said before I even reached her. "I should go." Then she left. No introduction. No explanation. Just snow crunching under her heels as she disappeared into the parking lot. Sophia looked confused. "Dad knew her," she said. I kept my face calm because mothers learn how to do that. Probably from work. But the second I said it, I knew I did not believe myself. Mark had been dead for 4 days. Heart attack. Sudden. Brutal. He collapsed inside an airport Marriott in Minneapolis while preparing for a client seminar. That was the story I had repeated all week to relatives and neighbors until it no longer sounded real even to me. I spent 11 years believing my husband's life made sense. Then a stranger cried at his funeral like she lost a future too. The first real crack came 30 minutes later inside the church fellowship hall. Mark's law partner, Greg, approached me holding a paper coffee cup with both hands. Greg was normally smooth. Controlled. Expensive smile. That day he looked pale. "Natalie," he said carefully, "there are some estate documents Mark updated a few years ago." My chest tightened instantly. "Updated how?" Greg glanced toward Sophia before lowering his voice. "The attorney would like to meet tomorrow morning." Tomorrow morning. Not next week. Not after the funeral. My fingers tightened around my untouched coffee. "Why?" Greg hesitated too long. "There are just some details requiring clarification." Clarification. People only use words like that when they are hiding explosions behind paperwork. I watched Greg walk away toward another group of mourners, and for the first time all week, grief shifted into something sharper. Suspicion. On the drive home, snow hit the windshield in soft waves while Sophia slept against the passenger window. I kept replaying small things I ignored during the last 2 years. Mark suddenly password protecting his laptop. Weekend finance conferences that never allowed spouses. Late night walks outside to take client calls. I had explained all of it away because adulthood trains women to normalize distance if the bills stay paid and nobody screams. When we got home, I went upstairs to change out of my funeral dress. Mark's side of the closet still smelled like cedar cologne and dry cleaning starch. That almost broke me. Then I noticed something missing. His wedding ring. I froze beside the dresser. I remembered clearly handing the funeral director Mark's personal effects envelope 3 nights earlier. Wallet. Watch. Phone. Ring. But the velvet tray on the dresser was empty now. I checked every drawer anyway. Then the bathroom counter. Then the nightstand. Nothing. My pulse started climbing. Downstairs, Sophia called my name softly. I walked into the kitchen and found her holding Mark's old iPad. "Mom," she said carefully, "why does Dad have notifications from someone named Claire?" My entire body went cold. The message preview stayed visible across the screen. "Thank you for today. I wish I could have stood next to you." I stared at the name first. Claire. Then at the timestamp. Sent during the funeral. Sophia looked up slowly. "Who is Claire?" I opened my mouth, but another notification appeared before I could answer. "This must be harder for you than anyone knows." Sophia read that one too. The kitchen suddenly felt too bright. Too small. I took the iPad from her carefully. "Go upstairs for a minute." "Mom. Please." She left reluctantly, and I stood alone beside the refrigerator holding my dead husband's iPad while snow darkened the windows outside. My thumb hovered over the message thread. Part of me still wanted a harmless explanation. Coworker. Client. Charity board member. Anything ordinary. Then I opened the conversation. The first thing I saw was a photo. Mark smiling beside the same blonde woman from the funeral. Both of them wearing winter coats. Both holding paper coffee cups. The date in the corner stopped my breathing for a second. February 14th, Valentine's Day. The same Valentine's Day Mark told me he was stuck in Milwaukee for a financial conference. I sat down slowly at the kitchen table because my knees suddenly felt unreliable. More photos loaded. Restaurants. Hotel balconies. Christmas lights downtown. Then one video thumbnail appeared near the bottom of the screen. Mark standing beside Claire near a lake at sunset saying quietly into the camera, "One day we will not have to hide anymore." I closed the iPad immediately like it burned me. Upstairs, Sophia's bedroom door creaked open. "Mom," she called softly. I stared at the dark screen in my hands while my husband's secret life pressed against my chest from the inside out. And somehow the worst part was not the affair. Not yet. The worst part was the growing realization that the woman at the funeral had not looked surprised to see me there. She looked guilty. I did not sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the woman at the funeral reaching into her purse for Sophia's inhaler spacer like she had practiced taking care of my family. Around 1:40 in the morning, I went downstairs in Mark's old Northwestern sweatshirt and opened the iPad again. I told myself I was looking for answers. Really, I was looking for proof that the affair had started recently. Something reckless. Temporary. Easier to survive. Instead, the messages stretched back 4 years. 4 years of restaurant reservations, airport selfies, inside jokes, weather updates, complaints about traffic, links to songs, photos of hotel coffee cups. Not dramatic passion. Daily life. That was somehow worse. Affairs in movies look explosive. This looked organized. Intimate. Routine. I kept scrolling until I reached a photo of a lake house deck covered in snow. Claire had captioned it, "Next Christmas here for real?" Mark replied with a heart emoji and, "Soon." Soon. My husband had been promising another woman a future while helping me pick backsplash samples for our kitchen renovation. Upstairs, a floorboard creaked. I slammed the iPad shut instinctively, like I was the one doing something wrong. Sophia appeared halfway down the stairs wrapped in a blanket. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. I almost said yes out of habit. Instead, I looked at her exhausted face and realized lying was part of what got us here. "I do not know," I admitted. She came into the kitchen slowly and sat beside me at the island. Was Dad seeing her? The question landed heavily between us. I stared at the dark window over the sink. I think so. Sophia nodded once without crying. Teenagers process shock strangely. I met her before, she said quietly. My head turned so fast my neck hurt. What? Sophia picked at the edge of the blanket. Last spring. Dad said she worked with one of his charity projects. My stomach tightened instantly. Where? At that brunch place near Oak Brook Mall. She hesitated. She already knew my order. That tiny detail almost shattered me. Mark forgot parent-teacher conferences sometimes. But another woman knew my daughter liked strawberry crepes with no powdered sugar. Cause and effect started connecting brutally fast inside my head. The inhaler spacer. The familiarity. The funeral message. This was not hidden from Claire. Only from me. By 8:15 the next morning, I sat inside a downtown Naperville law office staring at framed sailboat prints while Mark's estate attorney shuffled papers carefully across a polished conference table. His name was Leonard Price. Late 60s. Silver glasses. Calm voice. The kind of man who had delivered terrible news professionally for decades. Sophia sat beside me scrolling silently through her phone, pretending not to listen. Leonard folded his hands together. Mrs. Rivera, before we discuss distribution details, I need to clarify that your husband amended several estate documents approximately 3 years ago. My chest tightened again. Distribution to who? Leonard glanced down at the papers instead of at me. That answered enough already. Certain investment accounts, a lake property interest, and a life insurance policy were reassigned to Claire Whitmore. Sophia stopped scrolling immediately. The room went completely still. I heard the faint hum of heating vents overhead and nothing else. Who is Claire Whitmore? I asked, even though I already knew. Leonard inhaled carefully. According to your husband's documentation, she was listed as a long-term personal beneficiary. Personal beneficiary. The legal language somehow made the betrayal colder. I leaned forward slowly. How much? Another hesitation. Approximately 70% of non-retirement liquid assets. Sophia whispered, "Oh my God," under her breath. I sat back in the chair because suddenly my body felt disconnected from the room. Leonard kept speaking about trusts and account structures, but my attention snagged on one specific sentence. The revisions began in 2021. 2021, the same year Mark insisted we renew our vows during our anniversary trip to Sedona. I remembered standing beside Red Canyon rocks in a white dress while he promised forever in front of our daughter. The emotional reversal hit so hard it almost made me dizzy. I had remembered that trip as proof we survived a difficult period. Now it looked like guilt management. After the meeting, Sophia went to school because she said sitting at home would make her feel worse. I watched her walk into the building clutching her backpack too tightly and realized she was trying not to cry in public. Then my phone buzzed. Greg. Mark's business partner. Can you come by the office today? There are some client files to review. The wording felt wrong immediately. Mark handled retirement planning, not classified government secrets. Still, I drove downtown because I needed movement more than thinking. Greg's office sat on the 12th floor of a glass building overlooking the frozen Riverwalk. The second I entered, I noticed something strange. Mark's framed family photo was gone from his desk. Only the outline remained in dust beside the monitor. Greg saw me looking. His assistant boxed personal items yesterday, he said too quickly. I nodded slowly. False explanation. I could hear it now. Grief sharpens instincts in ugly ways. Greg handed me a cardboard file box and avoided direct eye contact. Mostly account closures and transfer notices. I flipped through the folders absently until one envelope stopped me cold. Lakeview Residential Management. The return address listed a downtown Chicago apartment building. What is this? I asked. Greg's face changed instantly. Tiny shift. But enough. Probably investment property paperwork. Mark never owned investment property downtown. Natalie. His voice softened too much. You should really let the attorneys handle financial details right now. That sentence alone confirmed there was something worth hiding. I slid the envelope from the folder and opened it right there in front of him. Inside was a utility statement addressed jointly to Mark Rivera and Claire Whitmore. Jointly. My pulse started pounding hard enough that I could hear it in my ears. The service address sat in bold letters near the top. West Monroe Street. Chicago. Greg stood up from behind his desk. Natalie. I looked at him slowly. How long did you know? He froze completely. Silence answered first. Then came the worst part. Long enough to know Mark was struggling, he said quietly. Struggling. I almost laughed. My husband had a secret apartment with another woman and people were describing him like he had seasonal depression. I shoved the utility statement back into the envelope. Did everyone know except me? Greg rubbed his forehead tiredly. Not everyone. Enough people. He did not deny it. I left the office shaking so badly I dropped my car keys in the parking garage twice before unlocking the door. Once inside, I sat behind the steering wheel staring at the utility statement spread across my lap. Apartment 2408. West Monroe Street. My husband had another address. Another life. Another woman who apparently received more honesty from him than I did during the final 4 years of our marriage. Then my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then a text appeared. This is Claire. I think we should talk before you hear things out of order. I stared at the screen while cold parking garage light reflected across the windshield. The wording alone told me everything. She was not panicking. She was preparing. And somehow that frightened me more. I did not answer Claire right away. I sat in the parking garage with both hands wrapped around my phone while the concrete ceiling hummed above me and Greg's office tower glowed through the windshield. The message sat there like a hand placed gently over my mouth. This is Claire. I think we should talk before you hear things out of order. Out of order. As if my husband's second life had a proper sequence. As if there was a polite way to learn that another woman had inherited the future I thought belonged to my daughter and me. I typed, "What do you want?" Then deleted it. I typed, "How dare you?" Deleted that too. Finally, I wrote, "Where?" She replied in less than 10 seconds. Maple and Ash, 3:30. Private booth. He always said you liked quiet places. My stomach dropped so violently I almost opened the car door for air. He always said. That was the part that kept cutting deeper. Not that Mark talked to her. That he talked about me. I drove there too early because waiting at home would have turned me into a ghost. On the way, I passed the elementary school where I worked as a counselor and almost pulled into the lot out of instinct. My life used to have anchors. School. Home. Sophia. Mark's calendar on the fridge. Now every ordinary place looked like a stage set built around one person's lies. At a red light near Ogden Avenue, my phone buzzed again. Sophia. Did you know Dad had an apartment? I nearly missed the green light. A driver behind me honked. I pulled into a side street and called her immediately. She answered but did not speak. Where did you hear that? I asked. Aunt Melissa texted me by accident, Sophia said. Her voice was flat in the way teenagers sound when they are trying not to fall apart. She asked if you had found out about West Monroe yet. My fingers tightened around the steering wheel. Mark's own sister knew. The humiliation came in layers now. Claire. Greg. Melissa. Maybe more. Each person had carried one piece of my marriage like a secret souvenir. I am handling it, I said softly. No, Mom, Sophia whispered. You are finding out. Then she hung up. That sentence stayed with me all the way to the restaurant. Maple and Ash was dim even in the afternoon, all dark wood, brass fixtures, and low amber light. A hostess led me to the back without asking my name, which meant Claire had arranged it carefully. Of course she had. Claire Whitmore stood when she saw me. She was taller than I expected, elegant in a charcoal sweater dress, blonde hair pinned low, eyes swollen but steady. She did not look like a homewrecker from a cheap movie. She looked like a woman who had also been awake all night. That made me angrier. I wanted cruelty. Cruelty would have been easier. Natalie, she said. Do not say my name like you know me. She flinched. Good. I sat across from her but kept my coat on. Distance mattered. Armor mattered. Claire folded her hands on the table. No jewelry except small pearl earrings and a thin gold band on her right hand. I am sorry about Mark. I leaned forward. He was my husband. I know. Do you? Her mouth tightened, but she did not look away. Yes. A server approached with water, sensed the air, and retreated without speaking. Claire reached into her leather bag and placed a white envelope on the table. I brought copies of what I have. I almost laughed. You brought evidence to lunch? I brought dates, she said quietly. Because I think he told us different stories. That gave me pause. A false lead had formed in my mind overnight. Claire as the planner. Claire is the woman who took everything. Claire is the thief standing beside my grief. But the envelope in front of me did not feel like victory. It felt like she was afraid of the truth too. I opened it. Inside were printed emails. Lease documents. Photos. Calendar entries. The first email stopped me cold. From Mark to Claire, dated May 2020. I have told Natalie we are separated emotionally, but the legal timing is complicated because of Sophia. My throat closed. Separated emotionally? I said. Claire nodded slowly. That is what he said. I looked up at her. We renewed our vows the next year. Her face changed. Not dramatically. Just enough for pain to break through. He told me that trip was for Sophia. A family stability thing. I could not help it. I laughed once. Sharp and empty. A family stability thing. That was our anniversary. Claire looked down at her hands. I did not know that. I wanted to call her a liar. The word rose hot in my throat. Then she slid another photo toward me. Mark and Claire standing in front of the lake house deck. Snow everywhere. His arm around her shoulders. On the back, handwritten in Mark's neat block letters, First honest Christmas soon. The date was December 23, 2021. My mind snapped instantly to that year. Mark had told me his flight from Minneapolis was delayed by weather. Sophia and I ate tamales at my mother's house without him. He called us from what he said was an airport lounge. In the photo, he was wearing the blue scarf I had given him that morning before he left. I pushed the picture back because touching it felt like agreeing it was real. Claire's eyes filled, but she did not cry. He told me you preferred holidays with your family and barely noticed when he was gone. I cried in the pantry that night so Sophia would not see. Claire closed her eyes. That was the first moment I saw her lose balance. Not physically. Morally. She had believed she was entering an already empty marriage. I had believed I was living inside a tired but intact one. Mark had stood between us, translating both lives into whatever version served him best. My phone rang on the table. Greg again. I answered on speaker without asking Claire's permission. Natalie, he said quickly, please do not go to the apartment alone. Claire's head lifted. I stared at the phone. Why? There are documents there that may be misunderstood. Claire's face sharpened. What documents, Greg? Silence. Greg recognized her voice. That told me they knew each other too. Claire, he said carefully, this is not helpful. I felt something cold and clear settle inside me. How many people were managing my ignorance? Greg exhaled. Natalie, Mark was trying to avoid a messy situation. He left 70% of our liquid assets to another woman. My voice rose despite myself. That seems messy. Greg lowered his tone. There is more to the estate structure than Leonard explained. Claire went still. What does that mean? Do not meet at the apartment, Greg said. Please. Then the line went dead. For a few seconds, neither of us moved. The restaurant sounds returned slowly around us. Forks. Glasses. Quiet music. Claire reached for her coat. We are going to West Monroe. I stood too fast, knocking my water glass sideways. We are not going anywhere together. She held my gaze. Natalie, if Greg is scared of what is in that apartment, then whatever Mark hid there hurts both of us. I hated that she was right. We drove separately. I followed her black Audi through late afternoon traffic into Chicago, keeping one car between us like distance could protect my dignity. The West Monroe building was newer than I expected. Sleek lobby. White orchids. A doorman who smiled at Claire with recognition, then looked at me with sudden discomfort. Mrs. Whitmore, he said. Then his eyes flicked to me. And Mrs. Rivera. Both titles in one lobby. There it was. The whole ugly geometry of Mark's life. Upstairs, apartment 2408 opened with Claire's key. She stepped aside and let me enter first. The place was warm, quiet, and painfully lived in. Men's running shoes by the door. A framed photo of Mark and Claire at Navy Pier. A gray sweater folded over a chair. Not a hotel room. Not an affair nest. A home. My husband had a home I had never been invited into. I walked through the living room slowly while Claire stayed near the kitchen island, giving me space. That almost made me hate her more. On the bookshelf, I found a small wooden box with Mark's initials. Inside was his wedding ring. My wedding rings match. I picked it up, and for one impossible second, I felt married to him again. Then I saw the note beneath it. For when I finally tell Natalie. I unfolded it with shaking hands. It was not addressed to Claire. It was addressed to me. Natalie, if you are reading this, I waited too long. The room blurred. Claire moved closer but stopped 3 feet away, careful not to touch me. I kept reading. I never meant for you to learn this from paperwork. I kept thinking I could protect Sophia, protect you, protect Claire, and somehow not become the worst version of myself. But every month I waited made me more dishonest. At the bottom was a date. 6 months before his heart attack. Not years ago. 6 months. Which meant Mark had known the ending was coming. He had planned to tell me. Or told himself he would. Then Claire opened a drawer near the desk and gasped. I looked up. She held a folder labeled private, if anything happens to me. Inside were flash drives, printed account summaries, and a sealed letter with Sophia's name on it. My daughter's name. I crossed the room and took it from her hands. No, I said. Claire's voice broke for the first time. I did not know about that. And strangely, I believed her. Because her shock was too immediate. Too unguarded. We had both been invited into different rooms of the same burning house. Mark had simply locked the connecting door. Then someone knocked hard on the apartment door. 3 sharp knocks. Claire and I turned at the same time. Through the peephole, I saw Greg standing in the hallway, his face pale, one hand pressed against the doorframe like he had run there. He was not alone. Beside him stood Mark's estate attorney, Leonard Price, holding a briefcase against his chest. Claire whispered, "Why would they both come here?" I looked down at the folder in my hands, at Sophia's sealed letter, at the wedding ring Mark had hidden in another woman's apartment. For the first time since the funeral, the affair no longer felt like the biggest secret. It felt like the door to something larger. And Greg had just arrived to keep it closed. Greg knocked again before either of us moved. Claire stood near the desk with one hand still on the folder. I held Sophia's sealed letter against my chest like someone might try to take it. Through the door, Greg said, "Natalie, open up. We know you are in there." That word bothered me. We. Not I. Not Leonard. We. I looked at Claire. Did you call them? Her face flushed with offense. No, I believed her too quickly, and that scared me. 48 hours earlier, I would have blamed her for everything. Now I was standing in her apartment trusting her more than my husband's best friend. I stepped quietly to the wall beside the door instead of opening it. Claire followed my movement and turned off the desk lamp. The apartment dimmed instantly. Outside, Leonard's voice replaced Greg's. "Mrs. Rivera, there are sensitive documents in that unit. Mishandling them could complicate your daughter's inheritance." My entire body went still. Sophia's inheritance. He had chosen that phrase carefully. Not the estate. Not Mark's wishes. My daughter. I lifted the sealed letter slightly so Claire could see the name written across it. Sophia Rivera. They know about this, I whispered. Claire shook her head slowly. Or they are afraid you found something worse. That was the first decision I made that night from instinct instead of shock. I slid the letter into my coat pocket and handed Claire the folder. "Make copies." Her eyes widened. "Now?" Another knock shook the door. "Now." Claire moved fast. She opened a small scanner app on her phone and began photographing every page on the desk with steady hands, one after another. I moved through the apartment, not randomly this time. I searched with purpose. Desk drawers. Bookshelf boxes. Coat closet. Mark had been organized to the point of obsession. If he hid one thing here, there would be a system. In the hallway closet, behind winter scarves, I found a black canvas messenger bag I recognized instantly. Mark used it for work trips. My throat tightened because I had packed snacks in that bag once before his Denver conference. Inside were 2 phones, a key ring, and a spiral notebook filled with dates. Not romantic dates. Transfer dates. Meeting dates. Attorney initials. I flipped to the final written page. "Claire," I said. My voice sounded strange. She came beside me. I pointed to one line. "NR disclosure delayed until after Sophia Trust executed." Claire read it twice. "Natalie Rivera?" I nodded. My initials looked wrong in his handwriting. Clinical. Managed. Like I was a task he kept postponing. The hallway outside went quiet suddenly. Too quiet. I crept to the peephole. Greg and Leonard were walking away toward the elevator, speaking low. For 1 second, I thought they had given up. Then Leonard took out his phone and called someone. Claire grabbed her coat. They are not leaving. They are regrouping. I made another choice before fear could talk me out of it. Follow them. Claire blinked. Together? You have the key. I have the reason. We stepped into the hallway 30 seconds later and took the stairs down instead of the elevator. My legs trembled, but movement helped. Grief had made me passive for days. Now every step felt like a small refusal. In the lobby, we stayed behind a marble column while Greg and Leonard crossed toward the side exit. The doorman watched us with nervous recognition but said nothing. Outside, a black town car waited at the curb. Greg got in first. Leonard followed. Claire pulled her Audi keys from her pocket. "My car is in the garage." I hesitated. Riding with Claire felt obscene. Necessary. Both. That was the contradiction I could not escape. I hated her, but she was the only other person in Chicago who had been lied to by the same dead man. We followed the town car through evening traffic at a cautious distance. Claire drove smoothly, eyes forward, jaw tight. I watched Greg's car 2 vehicles ahead while opening Mark's notebook under the dashboard light. One address appeared 3 times beside the initials LP and GM. A storage facility in Lyle. They are not going to an office, I said. Claire glanced over. What are you looking at? A map Mark left without knowing he left it. The town car turned onto the expressway heading west. So did we. My phone buzzed in my coat pocket. Sophia. Where are you? I stared at her name and felt guilt cut through the adrenaline. I typed, safe. I will explain tonight. Then I stopped. That was the same kind of sentence Mark used. Delayed truth dressed as protection. I deleted it and wrote, I found a letter from Dad with your name on it. I am making sure no one takes it. I will come home as soon as I can. Her reply came slowly. Okay. Please do not lie to me too. I closed my eyes for 1 second. You have a daughter? Claire asked quietly. No, she said before I could answer her look. I mean, I know Sophia. But I never had children. The ache in her voice surprised me. I had assumed Claire wanted my whole life. Maybe she had only wanted the parts Mark offered her and pretended not to see the rest. That did not absolve her. It changed the shape of my anger. The town car pulled into a storage facility off a frontage road, surrounded by chain-link fencing and orange security lights. Claire parked 2 rows back. We watched Greg and Leonard enter the main office. 5 minutes later, the gate rolled open and they drove inside. I checked the notebook again. Unit C-119. Claire reached into her glove compartment and pulled out a small flashlight. I volunteer at old building sites, she said when I looked at it. Do not make that face. I almost laughed. It came out broken. We waited until the town car disappeared around the far row, then walked quickly through the pedestrian gate as another customer exited. The air smelled like cold metal and wet pavement. We kept close to the shadows of the storage units, Claire a step ahead, me clutching Mark's notebook under my coat. Around the corner, Greg's voice carried faintly. We need the original before Natalie turns this into a fight. Leonard answered, if the trust letter surfaces, the allocation becomes harder to defend. Trust letter. Not Sophia's letter. Another one. I leaned closer to the corrugated wall, my breath visible in the orange light. Claire's shoulder brushed mine, and neither of us moved away. Greg unlocked Unit C-119. The door rattled upward just enough for them to slip inside. When the light flicked on, I saw stacked banker boxes. Mark's handwriting on every label. Taxes. Client backups. Personal. Rivera family. My knees nearly gave out at that last one. Rivera family. In a storage unit neither his wife nor daughter knew existed. Claire whispered, we should call someone. And say what? I whispered back. That my dead husband had paperwork and his lawyer is collecting it? But she was right. I needed proof before confrontation. I lifted my phone and recorded through the narrow opening between 2 units. Greg emerged carrying a red folder. Leonard held a sealed envelope with Mark's handwriting across the front. Natalie read before signing anything. My name. My actual name. Not initials. Not beneficiary language. Me. I stepped out before Claire could stop me. Give me that. Greg froze so completely the red folder slipped against his chest. Leonard turned pale. Natalie. I walked toward them, phone still recording at my side. My husband wrote my name on that envelope. So unless you want to explain on camera why his attorney is removing it from a storage unit without notifying me, hand it over. Claire stepped into the light behind me, silent but present. Greg looked from her to me, and for the first time, he seemed to understand we were no longer two women separated by Mark's lies. We were two witnesses. Leonard adjusted his glasses with a shaking hand. This is not what you think. I almost smiled. Everyone kept saying that. And every time, what I thought was bad. What they were hiding was worse. He did not hand me the envelope. Instead, he tucked it deeper under his arm. That was his mistake. Because Greg, exhausted or guilty or simply done protecting a dead man's chaos, reached over and took it from him. Enough, Greg said. He held it out to me. Leonard hissed his name, but Greg did not move. I took the envelope. It felt heavier than paper should. On the front, beneath my name, Mark had written one more line in smaller letters. If Leonard tries to delay this, do not trust the first will. The storage unit seemed to tilt around me. The first will. Claire whispered, first? Greg closed his eyes. Leonard said nothing. And suddenly the 70% Claire inherited was no longer the final betrayal. It was only the version someone wanted me to accept. I did not open Mark's envelope inside the storage facility. Not because I was patient. Because my hands were shaking too hard to tear the seal cleanly, and something about opening my dead husband's last warning beneath orange security lights felt wrong. Greg stood in front of the half-open unit, looking 10 years older than he had at the funeral. Leonard kept his briefcase pressed against his side like a shield. Claire stood slightly behind me, quiet but alert. For once, she did not try to explain anything. What does he mean by the first will? I asked. Leonard's mouth tightened. Natalie, estate documents often go through drafts. Greg turned toward him sharply. Do not. That single phrase changed the air. Leonard looked at Greg with open warning. Greg looked back with exhaustion. She already found the envelope, Greg said. This is over. I stepped closer. What is over? Leonard said nothing. Greg finally looked at me. Mark changed the will again. The sentence should have brought relief. Instead, it made my stomach twist. When? Greg swallowed. 8 weeks before he died. Claire made a small sound behind me. Not anger. Shock. That was when the first emotional reversal hit me. Claire had not known either. The woman I thought had taken my future had also been holding a version of it that was already expired. I looked down at the envelope with my name on it, then back at Leonard. Why was I shown the old version? Leonard adjusted his glasses. Because the newer documents were not fully processed. Greg shook his head. They were processed enough to matter. Leonard snapped, You are not an attorney. No, Greg said, voice hard now. But I am the one Mark called when he realized he had made a disaster of everyone's life. The cold cut through my coat, but I barely felt it. A few feet away, rows of storage doors stretched into darkness like locked memories. I tore open the envelope at last. Inside were 2 pages and a handwritten note. The note came first. Natalie, if you are reading this, I failed you before I failed anyone else. Do not let Leonard rush you. Do not sign the settlement waiver. The assets were never meant to stay where they are. My breath stopped on the word settlement waiver. Leonard had not mentioned any waiver. Not once. I lifted my eyes slowly. You were going to ask me to sign something. Leonard's expression did not change, but his silence moved faster than any confession. Claire stepped forward. What waiver? Greg reached into the red folder and pulled out a packet. This. He handed it to me before Leonard could object. The title page read, Surviving Spouse Acknowledgement and Non-Contest Agreement. My mouth went dry. Non-contest? Greg nodded. If you signed it, you would accept the version Leonard presented yesterday. You would give up the right to challenge later amendments. I thought of the conference room. Leonard's calm voice. The sailboat prince. His careful sympathy. The way grief had made me obedient. You were going to use my husband's funeral week to make me sign away my rights. Leonard finally spoke. Your husband created conflicting instructions. My job is to limit litigation. Your job was to tell me the truth. My voice did not rise. That made it stronger. Leonard looked away first. Claire took the second page from my trembling hand and read silently. Her face changed halfway down. Natalie, she said quietly, look at this. I took it back. It was a revised distribution summary. The lake property would be sold. A portion would go to Claire. A larger portion would fund Sophia's education trust. The primary residence and protected accounts would remain with me. The insurance payout had been split 3 ways. Not clean. Not noble. But different. Much different. Mark had not erased me in the final version. He had tried, late and badly, to repair the damage without facing me alive. That realization did not heal anything. It made everything more complicated. I wanted him to be simple. Cruel. Cowardly. Gone. Instead, the paper in my hand showed a man who had betrayed me, panicked, and then tried to rearrange the wreckage from behind a desk. Claire turned away slightly, wiping under one eye. For the first time, I understood that her grief had just changed shape too. 10 minutes earlier, she believed Mark had chosen her completely. Now she was learning he had revised that choice while still kissing her goodbye. Pain moved around the storage unit, changing owners. Leonard reached for the documents. These need to remain in professional custody. I pulled them back. No, Greg stepped between us. Let her keep copies. Leonard's face hardened. You are exposing yourself professionally. Greg gave a tired laugh. I exposed myself the minute I helped Mark keep secrets. That sentence landed heavily. I looked at him. Why did you? He did not answer immediately. A truck passed beyond the fence, headlights sweeping across his face. Because Mark kept saying he needed time. Because he was my friend. Because Claire was kind. Because you seemed stable. Because Sophia was still in high school. Pick one excuse. None of them sound good anymore. The honesty was ugly, but it was real. I hated him less for giving it to me. I hated the situation more. My phone buzzed in my coat pocket. Sophia again. Are you coming home? I looked at her message, then at Mark's letter with her name still unopened in my other pocket. For a second, my instinct was to protect her by waiting. Then I remembered her words. Please do not lie to me too. I typed back, yes. And I found something Dad wrote for you. I will not open it without you. The reply came almost immediately. Thank you. 2 words. Small mercy. Claire watched me put the phone away. He left Sophia a letter? I nodded. Her face softened with a sadness that had no jealousy in it. He talked about her constantly. I almost snapped that she had no right to say that. But the anger came slower now. Mark had made both of us witnesses to partial truths. Claire knew the version of him who cried about missing his daughter. I knew the version who forgot to refill her lunch account during finals week. Both were real. That was the horror. Back at Claire's apartment an hour later, we spread the copied pages across the dining table. It was absurdly domestic. 2 women on opposite sides of my husband's betrayal, sorting paper under pendant lights while Chicago moved outside the windows. Greg had followed us in his own car. Leonard had refused, saying all further communication should be through counsel. That was fine. His absence made the room easier to breathe in. Greg explained the timeline carefully. Mark first changed the estate 3 years earlier, during the peak of his relationship with Claire. Then, 6 months before his death, he began recording voice memos and drafting revisions. 8 weeks before he died, he signed updated instructions. Leonard delayed final circulation because Mark kept hesitating over how to tell me. Cause and effect became painfully clear. Mark's fear created delay. Leonard's delay created opportunity. My grief created vulnerability. And if I had signed too quickly, the first version would have become my cage. Then Claire opened one of the flash drives on her laptop. A folder appeared labeled Voice, Natalie. My name again. I stood behind her chair, suddenly unable to sit. Greg looked at me. You do not have to listen tonight. But I did. Because for days everyone had decided what I was ready to know. I was done being managed. Claire clicked the first file. Mark's voice filled the room, low and tired. Natalie, I have rewritten this 6 times because every version makes me sound like a coward. Maybe that is because I am one. My knees weakened, and I grabbed the chair back. He continued. I told myself leaving everything to Claire was honesty. It was not. It was punishment. Not for you. For the life I did not know how to leave. Claire covered her mouth. I could not move. Mark's voice crackled softly from the laptop. You did not fail our marriage alone. I just found a quieter way to fail at first. That was the twist that changed me. I had spent the last 2 days believing I had been replaced because I was not enough. But Mark had not built a second life from love alone. He had also built it from resentment, avoidance, guilt, and fear. Claire had been his escape. I had been his obligation. Sophia had been his excuse. And Mark had called all of it protection. The voicemail ended with one final sentence. If I die before I fix this, Natalie will think I chose Claire over her. The truth is worse. I chose not to choose until everyone was hurt. No one spoke after the recording stopped. Outside, sirens passed far below, fading into the city. I stared at the laptop screen until the file name blurred. Then I reached for Sophia's sealed letter and placed it in my purse. I am going home, I said. Claire stood. Natalie. I looked at her, ready for apology, explanation, anything. Instead, she removed a key from her key ring and placed it on the table. This is Mark's storage key. I do not want anything else hidden from you. That small action shifted something between us. Not friendship. Never that. But a fragile agreement that neither of us would keep protecting the man who had kept us apart. I picked up the key. Tomorrow, I said, we go through everything. Greg exhaled. Together? I looked at Claire. Then at the documents. Then at the city beyond the glass, where Mark had lived half a life without me. Together, I said. But not for him. By the time I got home, Sophia was sitting on the living room floor with Mark's old college hoodie pulled over her knees. The house looked painfully normal. One lamp on. Her backpack open. A half-finished glass of orange juice on the coffee table. I stood in the doorway holding the purse with her letter inside, and for 1 second I wanted to turn around and become the kind of mother who still had easy answers. Sophia looked up. You found something from Dad. I nodded. Yes. She held out her hand, but I did not give it to her immediately. There is more than one truth in it, I said. Her face changed. Mom, please do not make it sound like a counselor session. That hurt because she was right. I sat beside her on the rug and handed her the sealed envelope. She opened it carefully, like ripping it might hurt him. I watched her eyes move across the page. First confusion. Then pain. Then a kind of stillness I had never seen on my daughter's face. She whispered, he says he was sorry for introducing me to Claire. My throat closed. He should be. Sophia kept reading. Her fingers tightened around the paper. He says he wanted me to know she was not the reason he loved me less. She looked at me then. Did I think that? I reached for her, but stopped before touching her shoulder. I do not know, baby. She folded the letter once, then unfolded it again immediately, as if she regretted closing any part of him. He says he was going to tell us after my scholarship interview. I shut my eyes. That date was 3 weeks away when Mark died. 3 weeks. All his delays had finally collided with time. Sophia stood suddenly and walked toward the fireplace mantel where our family photo sat from Sedona. Mark's arm around me. Sophia between us. Red Canyon behind us. She picked it up and held it against her chest. Was any of this real? She asked. That was the question I had been avoiding since the funeral. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to say all of it. But the truth had edges now. Some of it was real, I said softly. Not enough of it was honest. Sophia nodded once, and then she broke. Not quietly. Not gracefully. She sank onto the couch and sobbed into Mark's hoodie while I sat beside her, helpless and furious at a man who was no longer alive to face the sound. The next morning, Claire met me outside the storage facility at 8:05 with 2 coffees and no makeup. That small detail unsettled me. She looked less like the woman from the funeral and more like someone who had also been left with a wreckage she did not know how to carry. Greg arrived 10 minutes later, looking like he had aged again overnight. He brought a portable scanner, legal pads, and a quiet apology he did not say out loud. We opened Unit C-119 together. The metal door rolled up with a shriek that echoed down the row. Inside, Mark's boxes waited in perfect stacks. Rivera family. Claire. Taxes. Sophia. Natalie. Final. That last label made my stomach twist. Claire reached for it first, then stopped and stepped aside. You should open that. I did. Inside were folders arranged by date, each with typed notes. Mark had not been careless. He had been terrified and meticulous. The first folder contained estate drafts. The second contained voice memos on a labeled flash drive. The third held copies of emails to Leonard, each one more urgent than the last. I need Natalie protected until I tell her, Mark wrote in one. I made the first revision in anger. It cannot stand. I read the sentence 3 times. In anger. That was the piece I had not expected. I looked at Greg. Anger about what? Greg's face tightened. Claire looked away. I felt the room shift before anyone answered. Tell me. Greg rubbed both hands over his face. Mark believed you were staying with him because it was comfortable. I almost laughed from exhaustion. Claire already told me that. No, Greg said quietly. He believed it because Leonard encouraged that reading. My eyes moved to him. What? Greg opened another folder and pulled out printed correspondence. Leonard was not just processing Mark's decisions. He was shaping them. Claire stepped closer. The email header showed Leonard's name. The language was careful, professional, poison-wrapped in legal advice. If Mrs. Rivera has emotionally disengaged and remains primarily for household stability, a more decisive beneficiary structure may reflect your authentic intent. I felt heat rise in my face. He never even met with me. Greg shook his head. No. Claire took the page from my hand, reading fast. There are more. There were messages where Leonard advised Mark to delay disclosure until after specific asset movements. Notes suggesting a non-contest agreement would reduce spousal disruption. Drafts positioning Claire as primary beneficiary before Mark had even decided whether to leave me. The emotional affair had damaged my marriage. But Leonard had helped turn confusion into legal architecture. Cause and effect sharpened brutally. Mark felt trapped. Claire offered escape. Leonard offered structure. Greg offered silence. I offered denial. And Sophia inherited the blast. We drove directly to Leonard's office without warning him. I did not call first. I did not ask politely. Claire walked beside me through the lobby, Greg half a step behind us holding the scanned files. The receptionist stood when she saw our faces. Mr. Price is in a meeting. Then interrupt it, I said. My voice sounded calm enough to frighten even me. Leonard appeared 10 minutes later near the glass conference room, smiling the thin smile of a man trying to regain control of a room he had not expected to lose. "Natalie, this is not appropriate." I placed his email on the reception counter between us. "Neither is advising my husband to write me out of his estate based on assumptions you encouraged." His smile vanished. Claire set another page beside it. "Neither is delaying updated documents after Mark changed his mind." Greg added the final folder. "Neither is preparing a waiver for a grieving spouse without disclosing a later amendment." For the first time, Leonard looked truly exposed. "Not afraid exactly. Calculating. You are misunderstanding privileged communications." I stepped closer. "No. I spent 11 years misunderstanding my marriage. I am done misunderstanding documents." The room went quiet. 2 assistants stopped typing. A man in a suit stepped out of a side office and immediately stepped back in. Leonard lowered his voice. "You need counsel before making accusations." "I have counsel now," I said. "And copies." That was not entirely true yet. But it was true enough to make his face change. He reached for the folder, and Greg pulled it back. "Original stay with Natalie." Leonard looked at Greg like he might destroy him with one sentence. Greg did not move. That was his late, insufficient redemption. Then Claire did something I did not expect. She removed Mark's apartment key from her purse and placed it on the counter beside the documents. "I will not contest the revised distribution." Leonard turned on her. "You do not understand what you are giving up." Claire's face trembled, but her voice stayed steady. "I understand exactly what I was given. A future built on someone else's ignorance." The words hit me hard because they were not just about money. They were about all of us. Leonard looked from her to me, realizing the division he expected was gone. He had counted on grief making me weak and Claire making me defensive. Instead, Mark's secrets had accidentally created 2 witnesses who no longer needed him translated. The confrontation should have felt victorious. It did not. It felt like standing in the ashes of a house and proving who bought the match. Leonard finally said, "I will forward all materials to your attorneys." "Today," I said. "Today," he repeated. When we walked out, my legs nearly gave out in the elevator. Claire reached toward me, then stopped before touching me. That restraint undid me. I pressed my hand over my mouth, but the breakdown came anyway. Not delicate crying. The kind that folds your body because there is nowhere left to put the truth. Claire turned her face toward the elevator doors and cried silently too. Greg stared down at the floor. None of us comforted each other. We were not friends. We were survivors of the same cowardice from different rooms. Outside, winter sunlight bounced off the sidewalk so brightly it hurt my eyes. Sophia called as I reached my car. "Mom," she said, voice small. "Did Dad really try to fix it?" I looked back at Leonard's building. At Claire standing by the curb alone. At Greg lighting a cigarette with shaking hands though I had never seen him smoke. "Too late," I said. "But yes. I think he tried." Sophia was quiet for a long time. Then she asked, "Does that make it better?" I opened my car door and sat down slowly. "No," I said. "It just makes it harder to hate him cleanly." And that was the whole truth. The worst truths do not always destroy love. Sometimes they leave just enough of it behind to make the pain more complicated. 3 months after the funeral, I sold the house Mark and I spent 11 years trying to outgrow. The realtor called it a beautiful transitional property for young families, and I almost laughed the first time she said it. Transitional. That word followed me everywhere now. The marriage. The lies. The revised will. The version of Mark I buried versus the one I discovered afterward. On closing day, I stood alone in the empty kitchen while movers carried out the last boxes. The walls still showed faint rectangles where our family photos had hung for years. Sophia walked through the room slowly with headphones around her neck but no music playing. We both kept pretending we were sorting objects instead of grieving a life that had already ended long before the heart attack in Minneapolis. "Do you want this?" she asked quietly from the hallway. She held the Sedona vow renewal photo in one hand. Mark smiling beside me beneath Red Canyon light. I stared at it for several seconds. Then I shook my head. "You keep it if you want." Sophia studied the frame. "I do not know if I want to remember him as fake or complicated." That sentence stayed with me the entire afternoon. Because by then I understood something painful: fake would have been easier. A fake husband means the marriage never existed. A complicated husband means parts of it were real enough to mourn. We moved into a smaller townhouse 20 minutes away near the Riverwalk. 2 bedrooms. Quiet street. Thin walls. No vaulted ceilings or oversized kitchen island pretending success could protect people from loneliness. The first night there, Sophia and I ate takeout Thai food on unopened moving boxes because we still could not find the silverware drawer organizer. Halfway through dinner, she laughed suddenly after dropping noodles on the floor. A real laugh. Quick and surprised. We both froze afterward like happiness itself felt disloyal. Then she laughed again, harder this time, and I realized healing does not arrive dramatically. Sometimes it enters disguised as exhaustion and cheap takeout in a half-empty room. Claire left Chicago sometime in March. She emailed me once before going. No long explanation. No request for forgiveness. Just a forwarding address for several boxes she insisted belonged to Sophia and me, including old family videos Mark had copied digitally years earlier. At the bottom she wrote, "I think he loved us both honestly and treated us both unfairly." I stared at that sentence for a long time before closing the laptop. I never replied. Not because I hated her anymore. Because there was nothing left to negotiate between us. Mark had spent years building emotional hallways between separate lives, forcing everyone to stand in different rooms without seeing the full floor plan. After his death, the walls collapsed all at once. The strangest part was this: once the lies were exposed, Claire became less important. The affair stopped being the center of the story. The real damage was the silence. The waiting. The years Mark spent avoiding one honest conversation because he wanted everyone to hurt a little less at the same time. All he actually did was spread the damage carefully over multiple lives. Leonard Price resigned from his firm 6 weeks after the confrontation. Greg told me quietly over coffee one morning, looking embarrassed even bringing it up. Several clients requested file reviews after rumors started circulating internally. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I mostly felt tired. Accountability after betrayal sounds satisfying in theory. In real life, it arrives quietly. No music. No triumph. Just paperwork and consequences landing slowly across ordinary days. Sophia started therapy in April. I did too. During one session, my therapist asked when I first noticed Mark emotionally pulling away. I answered immediately. During the pandemic. Then I stopped. Because that was not true. The truth reached back further. Little absences. Delayed conversations. The way he started thanking me instead of confiding in me. The way I stopped asking difficult questions because peace felt easier than honesty. That realization hurt more than discovering Claire. It forced me to see my own participation in the silence. Not the affair. Never that. But the quiet agreement many marriages drift into where comfort slowly replaces truth while both people pretend stability means intimacy. In May, Sophia and I visited Mark's grave for the first time since the burial. The cemetery sat on a hill outside Naperville, damp from recent rain, the grass bright green under cloudy skies. Sophia placed a small Northwestern keychain beside the headstone and stepped back. "He still would have loved this weather," she said softly. I smiled despite myself because she was right. Mark hated hot days. We stood there quietly for a while until Sophia finally asked, "Are you still angry at him?" I looked at the name carved into the stone. Mark Rivera. Husband. Father. Liar. Coward. Provider. Companion. Betrayer. None of those words appeared there, but all of them felt true. Some days, I admitted. Some days I miss him. Sophia nodded slowly. Me too. Then she walked back toward the car to give me privacy without announcing it. That small act nearly broke my heart. She had become older in 3 months. Not wiser. Just older. I sat beside the grave alone after she left. Wind moved softly through the cemetery trees, carrying the smell of rain and cut grass. For the first time since the funeral, I took out the final letter Mark wrote me. The one found in the storage unit. The paper had softened from being folded and unfolded too many times. I reread the final paragraph slowly. You deserved honesty much earlier than I gave it to you. I used to focus on the apology hidden inside that sentence. Now I focused on the timing. Much earlier. That was the tragedy of my marriage. Not that Mark loved someone else. Not even that he changed the will. It was that he understood the truth and still delayed it until truth became catastrophe. I folded the letter carefully and placed it beside the flowers at the base of the headstone. Then I said the thing I had been carrying for months. You did not leave me when you died. My voice sounded steady in the quiet cemetery air. You left in pieces for years. The wind lifted slightly, cold against my face. I stood there another minute before turning back toward the parking lot where Sophia waited inside our smaller, imperfect, honest new life. Halfway to the car, I realized something that would have terrified me 6 months earlier. I no longer needed Mark to explain himself for me to move forward. Some questions would stay unfinished forever. Some love stories end without clean villains. And some betrayals happen so quietly that by the time you hear them break, the silence has already changed you.